All right, it's me again. It's my pleasure to introduce a colleague of mine who was an outstanding legislator. She's a rural educator. She decided to run for office, and I met her for the first time in DeWitt. She was considering running in the district that I represented before we had redistricting. And we had a great conversation, and it seems like a million years ago. But Rita Hart is a great legislator that we're going to dearly miss in the Senate. Yeah. But sometimes you have a higher calling. And while we think a lot of ourselves in the Senate, having Rita as the Lieutenant Governor of Iowa would put us in great position to move the state forward. So it is my honor and privilege to introduce my friend, the next Lieutenant Governor, Rita Hart.
Thanks, Todd. Can you hear me with this thing? Yes? Okay.
Pull it down.
Pull it down. Okay. Good. Are we good here?
Yeah.
Yes. I'll use my teacher voice. Hey, it's so great to be here. Thank you so much for such a great work. What an awesome night, you know, weather-wise, company-wise, intellectual capacity-wise. It's all just great. Todd, I love the introduction because it's just exactly what the story is, right? It's just so hard to leave my Senate seat. It's so hard to leave my Senate family. We're like a family. We sit around that caucus table, especially the last 2 years, and you know, have to figure out everything we can do to fight for the people that we love back at home. Yeah. And we listen to each other, and we try to figure out the best way forward, and we bond in the process. And so that was a really difficult thing for me to decide to leave my Senate seat. But I am happy to be here tonight. I am happy to partner with Fred Hubble, the next governor of the state of Iowa. It's time to move this state forward. It's time to start putting people first. Yeah. That's what our message is. It's time to put people first. I know that not all of you know who I am. I know that you know who I am, but you don't know a lot about my background. I come from a dairy farm up on the north side of Charles City, Iowa, so in north central Iowa. I grew up there on that dairy farm with 8 brothers and sisters, and it was a great life. It was a hard-working, kind of a give-and-take kind of an atmosphere, and it's where I learned the basic values that you and I both hold. It was a great experience to live in a household where my mother was a strong Republican and my dad was a very strong Democrat. So like I said at the state convention, we would have a caucus at our dinner table every single night. And that's real bonding for years, right? And it taught me some great lessons. It taught me, for one thing, that you know, everybody has a strong opinion, and everybody voices it, and that's okay. And as you fight those things through, if you survive, you know, without fork tines in the back of your hand as you reach for that next thing of mashed potatoes, if you survive that, you recognize that you can get past those arguments, and you better get past those arguments, because you got to go out and pick up rocks, or get corn out of the beans, or whatever it is together. You have to make hay together. And you have to put aside those differences and get the work done. Somehow, we've lost that message in the state legislature the last couple years. And that's what we want to get back to. We want to get back to the idea of working together, of disagreeing and finding common ground and getting the work done. That's what Fred Hubble and I intend to do. You know, my background is very strong in education, and in agriculture. There's some hoops out there. I'm going to get to it. I was really happy to teach for over 20 years, junior high and high school, and was a proud member of ISEA. I also have lived on the farm nearly all my life. And my husband and I, Paul, where are you? Raise your hand over there. Paul and I have been farming south of Wheatland, so not very far from you guys. South of Wheatland, and we've been farming on his family farm for over 30 years, and raised our 5 children there. And then I spent the last 6 years at the state senate. So my background in education and agriculture has done me well at the state legislature. And that's why I go back to Todd, because Todd and I have served a lot on education committees and other efforts throughout our state legislative experience. And there's nobody that works harder for you guys than Todd Bowman. Todd does his homework. I know that when I'm on a committee with him, and I'm a little bit, I haven't spent as much time, or I need to know a little bit more, I know that Todd, I can go to him and he has done his homework. I can count on him. He's the guy, and he's in the classroom. He understands this education stuff up and down. And that's one thing that Todd and I have been very frustrated over the years, is that we'll get these bills that come across in the legislature, and we think, did anybody ask a teacher about this one? Did anybody talk to an educator about this crazy idea? So it's really helpful to have an active teacher there at the State House with us. So Todd, my hat's off to you, and I'm going to miss you. Okay, but the good news here, and you've seen it already tonight, is that as we cross the state of Iowa, it is clear that we have got a lot to vote for this year. It's not just about what we're voting against, it's about what we're voting for. We've got all kinds of candidates up and down the ticket, and that is going to be a great thing for us when we head into November. At every level, from supervisor to House to Senate to Secretary of State to all those positions, we have got great candidates to vote for. So I'm excited about that, and I know that as I talk to people, they understand that as well. They also understand how important this election is. You know, in the last couple years, in these difficult years that Todd and I have gone through, we've seen some tough things happen. We've seen Medicaid privatization take place and strip health care away from people who need it the most. We've seen mental health care not be provided to the people who need it locally, people who need the health care when it comes to mental health care across the state. We've seen collective bargaining rights stripped away. We've seen education and educators not respected and not get the funding that they need to do the job that's so important for all of us in the state of Iowa. So I'm here to tell you that things are going to change if the Hubble Hart ticket gets into, sorry, I almost messed that up. If the Hubble Hart ticket gets into office. The first thing we're going to do is bring that privatized Medicaid back under state control. We're going to start listening to the professionals who told us back then that this was not going to work, that it wasn't a good idea, that it needed to be done in a different way. And those medical professionals were not listened to. We're ready to listen to them, put them at the table, and figure out how to turn this thing back around. We're also going to do that with mental health care. We have to have better access to mental health care all across the state. People are telling us how many of their friends and relatives have been left without a bed, a mental health bed, have been not getting the services that they need. That's a travesty in this state. We need to turn that around. I'll take it. And as been mentioned before, we need to fund education. So that reputation that we have always had here in Iowa. We can do that if we put our money where our mouth is. I know that you are tired of divisive politics. We were talking about that over here in the corner here. We're tired of that. We don't like it. We know that just like at our dinner table growing up, if you have two people that don't agree and they have strong opinions on both sides, you find the common ground and get out there and get the job done. That's what we want. That's what you can expect from a Hubbell Hart governorship. That is what we need to get to. We need to find that common ground. We also need to work on raising people's incomes. We know that when we see in the newspaper that 40% of the people of Iowa are struggling to pay the bills, that something has gone very wrong. We've got to turn that around. And when we have an administration that not only doesn't support a higher minimum wage, but refuses to allow local places to raise their minimum wage, that something has gone wrong. We're not thinking about how to raise people's incomes across the state, and that has to get done. We've got a long list of things that have to get done. We've got to make some progress here. And we can do it if we get elected in November. We're not going to get elected in November unless we do it together. Everybody has to do their part. We all have to do what we can. We know that a blue wave is possible, but it's only possible if we all make our own ripples. We have to do the door knocking and the phone calling and the digging into the pockets and bringing out the money. We have to do everything it takes because, for God's sakes, there's a lot on the line this time. So let's get fired up. I'm looking forward to it.